Well, welcome to SBC 103D, Testing Agencies and Community Relations. So, and then Unit 2, which is Socialization. You have been taken through scholars that are known as Emil Durkheim and so on and so forth. You will be introduced to another scholar known as Charles Houghton Cooley on how the society helps us to develop our concepts. And this session is going to provide you with insights into how society through social interaction are determined. And I believe that you will enjoy it as we move along. When there is any question, don't hesitate to draw my attention to it. By the end of this discussion, you should be able to understand the self as a concept, explain the stages involved in the development of self according to Charles Houghton Cooley. The formation of the self is a central part of socialization process. It is not biologically given, but emerges in the central course of interaction with other people. The self represents the idea we have regarding our attitudes, capacities, and behavior. In everyday speech, we note the existence of the self in such paraphrases as proud of oneness, talking to oneself, losing control of oneself, ashamed of oneself, thirsting oneself, hating oneself, and loving oneself. We typically think that the self is in a static form as an entity or things, but the concept is employed by symbolic interactionists. It is also a dynamic property. And the question is, what is the area of arena for symbolic interactionists, which we have discussed previously when we're talking about perspectives. So what is it? Okay, so symbolic interactionists point out that we can be objects of our own actions. They view in this manner the self is a process by which we devise our actions in order to fit them to the ongoing actions of other people. Sociologists such as Charles Houghton Cooley, George Herbert Mead, and Erving Goffman have contributed significantly to our understanding of these matters. Now let's turn our consideration to Charles Houghton Cooley. Charles Houghton Cooley, Looking Glass Self, is what we're going to look at. So he showed how society largely determines how we come to think of ourselves, our abilities, capabilities, and physical look. Cooley basically explains that as human beings, we have some ideas or imaginations about who we are, but society ultimately acts as a mirror which gives us feedback on whether or not our imaginations about ourselves are true. Now, I believe you have all taken a mirror. We look at the mirror, we see ourselves in the mirror. So it's more or less like the society is giving us a reflection as to who we are from the mirror. I believe you understand that. He further argued that humans become conscious of themselves through the process of social interaction. He continued by saying that the term consciousness that arises within the social context as looking glass self is a process by which we imaginatively assume the stance of other people and view ourselves as we believe they see us. So you look at the mirror, you see your image in the mirror, and the image also reflects by seeing us in the mirror. Our ability to take perspective of another person is basically a requirement of all social behavior. Cooley suggested that the looking glass self is the ongoing mental process characterized by 3 phases. The first, we imagine how we appear to others. For example, we may think of ourselves as putting on weight and become fat. The second is we imagine how others judge our appearance. That is, we imagine how others judge our appearance. And the third is we develop some sort of self-feelings such as pride, shame, on the basis of what we perceive others to be. He further stated that there is favorable reflection in the social mirror that leads to a positive self-concept. That on the other hand, negative reflection leads to a negative self-concept. Considerable care must be taken in the way that we judge the reaction of others, because any misjudgment could eventually affect our self-concept. And the question is, what is self-image? Self-image is a mental concept or picture that we have of ourselves, which is relatively temporal. It changes as we move from one context to another. In other words, the development of the self is an ongoing process. In other words, it is not static. You have been introduced to the work of Charles Fulton Cooley. You learned that he used the concept that is known as the looking glass self to explain how society acts as a mirror to help us in developing our self-concept. His argument could be summed up in 3 stages. We imagine how we appear to others. We receive feedback from others on our imagination of ourselves. And based on the feedback, we develop a self-concept. And I hope you have understood this clearly by now. Any question? If there are no questions, then I will entreat you to join the next session as we discuss socialization in a different aspect. Until we meet again for that session, bye for now.